Okay, I'd like to start this module that looks at process improvement and its relationship to variation with a simulation called the dice game. Unfortunately, this game, which is actually quite a integral part of the classroom-based experience when we do this program, doesn't sort of translate that well to the online environment. However, earlier this year when we were in lockdown, I did film some footage of myself playing the 4 rounds of the dice game. And we can certainly discuss the results, and you can certainly get an appreciation of how the game works in practice. Okay, the dice game progresses through 4 rounds, and I'll get you to watch the first round first, and then we'll have a bit of a debrief, and then watch the remainder of the rounds. So the idea here is that the customer wants 10 deliveries. If we cast this in the context of high-tech leasing, they want 10 deliveries and 35 units of stuff delivered through the 10 deliveries. So that's an average of 3.5 per delivery. We have an organization which has a typical functional hierarchical structure, which I've shown at the top, and a process that winds its way through the different organizational groups that do value-added work. And so during the first round, we're going to have set up a process that has an average capacity of 3.5, which is what the customer wants on average. But there's going to be variation in the process that range from a minimum of 1 to a maximum of 6. So for example, on some days there may be people away, people on sick leave or annual leave, and so that capacity is not available to you. In addition, you might have people that are tied up reworking things that went wrong from the previous day's work, and again that takes away your capacity. So the minimum, we're going to put a cap on the minimum of at least 1, and at the other end of the spectrum, at other points in time, we have more than average capacity, because we could have people working overtime, we could get in some casuals and temps, and we're going to put an upper limit of 6 on the maximum capacity. Okay, if you watch the video that's labeled round 1 start and round 1 finish, what I've done is I've kicked off the game so you can get the gist of how it works, but then I've cut out the boring bits in the middle, and the second video takes you right to the finish to show you what state the process was in after the 10 cycles through the process. Okay, here I've summarized the results of round 1, how much the customer got at the end of each delivery. And a couple of things to point out is, firstly, is that we fell short of the 3.5. We only got an average of 2.1, and we accumulated a reasonable amount of work in progress in the process. So 14, and by that, if you look at 14 in proportion to 3.5, that is many multiples of capacity. The customer service level that I've calculated is just simply the 2.1 divided by 3.5. You'll also notice that some parts in the process have got no work in progress, while other parts of the process have got quite a high level of work in progress. So the work in progress is not evenly distributed through the process, it's actually quite lumpy. Okay, consider a department like Bob's. So Bob's level of work in progress is quite high, certainly in proportion to capacity. So imagine what it would feel like to work in a department like Bob's, and certainly over time, what kind of behaviors and organizational symptoms would emerge in that kind of department. So what I ask you to do is, if you could just make a list of those things and email them to me before the next session, so that I can use a consolidated list of people's feedback as part of the discussion. Okay, next we're going to continue with 3 more rounds of the dice game, and round 2 is going to be to represent a common strategy for improvement, which many organizations adopt, which is to find where the bottlenecks are in the process and fix those. And a common strategy for finding the bottlenecks is really where the backlogs and work in progress is piling up. So a department like Bob's would be an obvious choice for focusing on it and debottlenecking it. In most service industries, often that debottlenecking is in the form of just putting more people into that team. in many manufacturing and process industries, the debottlenecking is normally achieved through technology, automation, larger machinery, etc. So that's round 2 is going to be the debottlenecking version of the game. Round 3 is where we're going to build a larger organization. A common strategy for dealing with not meeting customer requirements when we fall short is just to put more resources into it. And so what we're going to do in round 3 is put 30% more resources. And the way we do this when we usually play the game in class is that everybody gets to add 1 to the face value of what comes up on the dice. So essentially we're playing with a dice that will vary between 2 and 7 around an average of 4.5. Which gives us 30% more capacity. Now, obviously in a real live organization, that would translate into also 30% more costs, but we're hoping that we can offset those costs by maybe charging a premium because we give better service. The final round, round 4, is where we reset the process back to base case, so average of 3.5, but we put a limit on the variation so that we only vary between 3 and 4. So the way we often simulate this in class is that basically if you throw a 1, 2 or a 3 on the dice, you read it as a 3, whereas if you throw a 4, 5 or a 6 on the dice, you read it as a 4. So we now have a process that can vary, that still has an average of 3.5, which is what we had in the base case, but can only vary between 3 and 4. Okay, what I've done on this slide is summarize the results of all the rounds. And first, if you look at round 2, where we had the debottlenecking strategy, we didn't really do much better than round 1. We managed to get one unit out more than round 1, but we also saw some increases in work in progress by the equivalent, or close to the equivalent of 100% capacity, so from 14 to 17. So these idea of these lumpy flows that put pressure on certain departments, we just made that worse. And we see in both round 1 and round 2 quite a bit of variability in what output the customer got on any given round, varying between 1 and 4 in round 1 and 1 and 5 in round 2. Round 3, now this is the round where we have 30% more resources. And you see that we actually got more out. We managed to get 29 items out, average of 2.9. But unfortunately, still we fell short of the 3.5 target. And again, we just added to the work in progress. So the work in progress problems that we had in round 1 with some teams having extreme backlogs just got worse. And again, we have quite a bit of variability between 2 and 5 came out any given round. The best result was during round 4. And what you see in round 4 is a couple of things that are distinctive. Firstly, the work in progress is really low. It's only 4. And typically where it occurs, it tends to occur in a single unit or maybe 2 units somewhere. So we don't have these massive backlogs. We have backlogs that are a fraction of capacity, not a multiple of capacity. We got the most out. We still fell short of the 3.5, unfortunately, but we did better than the other rounds. We got average of 3.1. But the other interesting thing about round 4 is we got consistency. We got 3 9 times out of 10. And then the one time we didn't get a 3, we just slightly overshot to a 4. So in round 4, we were able to offer the customer a customer guarantee. We could guarantee 3 on every round. Because of that consistency, if we wanted to be guaranteeing 3.5, all we would need to do is just ratchet the whole capacity up by 0.5, and we'd have a process that pretty much sits on 3.5 most of the time and occasionally produces a 4.5 outcome. So that gave us the best outcome, and in fact what we see in round 4 is basically what a just-in-time production system looks like, or what I prefer to call a more general term, this is a lean workflow. When many Western companies tried to emulate Toyota with just-in-time, they really completely misunderstood the cause and effect relationship. They saw the just-in-time production system as being a low inventory production system. keeping in mind that the work in progress in manufacturing companies is going to be in the form of inventory, stuff that you need to buy and store. Just in time is not a low inventory production system. It is a low variation production system. So the low inventory is as a result of the low variation. So the cause and effect relationship is from variation to low inventory. And the way many organizations misunderstood that is they thought that the key driver was the low inventory. No, the key driver is the variation. The inventory, the low inventory is really the sign that you're successful.